Why buy your next vehicle from Community Motors of Mason City?
Great service from 3 locations: Community in Monroe, Community Motors Westside, and Mason City Ford. 10 new franchises and hundreds of vehicles to give you more choices. Plus, Community offers an exclusive 3-3 warranty on pre-owned vehicles and 10-year, 250,000-mile warranty on new. Need more reasons why? Stop or visit CommunityAutoGroup.com.
Because nobody beats a community deal, nobody.
Number 3 is managed competition process, sanitation department. RFP is something that was on council priorities. Mr. Trout has provided a packet for everybody in the public to see. And go ahead and open it up, and then we'll do a discussion.
You know, we talked about looking at the RFP for sanitation services, and back when I went to the City Managers Association conference in Milwaukee last year, one of the topics that they had on the agenda was managed competition, and I went to that particular class and learned about what some communities are doing, and they are looking at services that they currently provide at the public level and the possibility of should those be or not be done by the public sector. They look at services that there is, and typically they start with services that have clear people that can provide that service in the private side. So when we started looking at this, I started doing a little more digging and started seeing what other communities are doing it. Found a very complex but thorough analysis that's been done by the City of San Diego. They have a very clear process that they go through where they do a pre-assessment determining whether this is a service that we should look at for a managed competition RFP, and then they work through the list of different topics and services that are provided. I find it very compelling. I think that each of those different pieces of reports that I gave you have shown that there's clear examples of where the city can compete very clearly with the private side and be successful, and that oftentimes that's how it works. There are some places like Phoenix, they have set it up. They have, I think, 3 out of their 5 routes with regards to sanitation services that have been privatized, but the other 2 are still kept with the public. Public has won bids. They have a policy where they're not going to get completely out of the sanitation business because if the private side never didn't fulfill their contract, they need to be able to step back in because it is their responsibility to pick up the garbage. But through this process, I find that it's a very open, transparent process. There are walls, though, that are built between those that are going to make the decision on who is the right party to do the service and those that are helping to prepare the public side's bid, for lack of a better term. And so it is somewhat complex, but it's manageable as a process. I don't know specifically who would fall on each side of that process, but the public individuals would be provided the resources that we would need in order for them to be able to put together a qualified bid to be able to compete against the private side. So I look at it being something that's able to do. The quality of service is specifically spelled out in the RFP. So at no point do you end up getting to a point where you're not going to provide the quality of service that you want to see. And the council and the staff would come together and determine what that level of service is, and then you build the RFP from that level of service and show the metrics that you will have as they continue to provide the service. And that's the other thing that on the back end of the managed RFP process is that no matter whether you give it to the private side or to the public side, you end up with metrics that exist so that you can continue to manage and to measure from year to year whether or not the quality of service stays at where you established it when you did the RFP. And if at any point during that process, whatever entity is doing it isn't meeting the standard, you can then pull the contract and say we're going back out for bid because you haven't met the quality of service that was expected. So I find it to be intriguing. Sanitation services is the first one we're talking about because that's where council started. But if you look at the list of different types of services, there's many services that could be considered for this type of thing. So I guess that's a quick summation of what I see as being involved in the answer.
Thank you very much, Mr. Trout.
Mr. Kuhn.
Excuse me. Thank you, Mayor. I appreciate what you've done looking into this, and I respect every council member's initiatives and ideas, and that's why I didn't oppose this when we put it as a council goal. But I respectfully oppose moving forward on this. I don't think it comes as any surprise to anybody, and for a number of reasons. But the first one, I think we're trying to fix a problem that isn't there. Since I've been on the council, going on 6 months now, I've received many calls on issues in the community, whether they're ideas, initiatives, complaints. Never have I received one on sanitation issues. So I think it potentially is sending the wrong message to workers who are doing a good job. I don't think even though I've read through this with a fine-tooth comb several times, there are some safeguards in there. I still don't think we should be sending a message to our workers that if you're doing a great job, you're doing a service that everyone respects and doing it at a great price, we should be putting your job on the line. And that's just my view. Another reason, even though there are safeguards in there, we're talking 12 current positions. And even though, let's hypothetically say this does go through and a private company does get the contract, I'm sure they would be looking for people who have that experience. And here in the memo you sent out, it says private providers often have a far greater degree of control regarding pay and benefit structures compared to the public sector organizations. I don't think that comes as any surprise. So say a company does get the contract, even though we may be shifting instead of losing jobs in the community, they could be at a substantially less wage scale and benefits. So that comes as another concern to me. A couple other things, as you mentioned in there about there's a number of services that could go out to a managed competition that, again, I just don't like the message that sends to city workers. We could be talking park workers, water, what's next to put out for bids. So that's another reason I would oppose it. And I think often we become complacent. It's something, we put our garbage out once a week and our recycling, and it's taken away in a timely manner, in a quality fashion, and it's something we become used to. I think if you saw, and I'm not saying a private company would by any means not do that well, but it's something that I believe if it wasn't a quality service, our phones would be ringing off the hook. So I think we become complacent when they do a good job. We just consider it should be done. So I don't think they probably get enough pat on the backs as they should. So there's a number of reasons I'm opposed to it. And again, I respect everyone's ideas and thoughts on this. I have a few questions, but I want to wait and hear some other thoughts. One other one is, I guess I will throw out one question about a level playing field. Say this does go through and we put out a managed competition RFP. If a private company comes in and bids, are they required to provide all the same services that public would, or are we talking apples and
we would specifically outline what would be required in the RFP. So right now that would entail the garbage pickup for residential, recycling pickup curbside for residential, and yard waste that's received right now, as our primary services, and we would establish the level of service that we would expect regarding that. Once a week pickup for each of those items. And so all those things would be, we work with the staff to make sure on the management side, all the things that we're doing specifically, that better understanding of what needs to be in the RFP, and all those items would be delineated.
The other, in the city of Bloomington, in the memo that outlines what they had done, there's a line there that says the process for managed competition RFP is described as being lengthy and painful. And with the number of items that we've put on for initiatives, I would not want our staff to go through a lengthy and painful process to award a contract to a service that's being done a good job by the workers right now. So that's just a few of my initial thoughts, and I have some more questions, but I guess
I was going to say is I definitely think that the first one is going to be the hardest because we won't have the existing framework that needs to be established on how you do a managed competition process. There are a lot of examples though, and so obviously I would look at borrowing from other cities that have done it. I mean, I put some, and I know there's communities in Texas that are doing it, that have done it for a long time, and so I would borrow from their format, pick the best practices regarding the process of managed competition, and then establish that. But the first one will be harder to establish, and then after that, we would be looking at each service, and there would be some experience level and how we go about it. So it would get better in the future. But the first one will take a little more time, I expect. I don't know exactly how long that would be.
One last comment in here where it talks about why are public agencies moving toward managed competition. And some of the bullet points are erosion of service, scarce resources, diminished public respect for government services, pressure from the private sector, political issues, and I went through those and I guess I couldn't figure out why we are doing it. So I don't think we've had an erosion of service, scarce resources. I don't think there's a lack of respect for the trash haulers. So again, I think we're trying to fix a problem that isn't there. So I'll start. Thank you.
Anyone else? Mr. Lee?
I agree with most of Councilman Keown's points, other than I wrote down the word comfortable. I'm not sure that's the one he used, but complacent possibly is the word he used, where I guess being too comfortable, too complacent isn't always a good thing. I would look at it as, I guess, looking at this, making sure we're getting the best bang for the buck. I agree with you. I'm not sure if there is a problem here. And if this would go the way I would anticipate, we just found out we're given and proven to our citizens that we have a great service here. And I'd hope that's what would come out of it. And I would think that's what would come out of it. I have looked at this, I've read through this, and I have received one phone call in that 6 months, and truthfully, I'm not sure if they, well, better not go there. I've had one phone call. But I think it's doing our due diligence on possible taxpayers' money and making sure our service is what we think we have, and I do think that. But it's going through, you wanted to put an RFP out possibly for the multi-purpose complex, just so we've done everything. Well, this is one of those examples maybe we need to look at doing as much as we can, if not to prove to us, but our citizens, that we do have that program. And it would have to be, if it was even close, I would have to say, because mechanisms in place, because we have the trash haulers and we have everything, it couldn't even be close to numbers. If the numbers are even close, we're going to stick with the program. At least in my view, we'd stick with the program we have and not change anything. The numbers would have to be quite beneficial to the private sector, and I don't see it. I really don't see that happening. But I guess I'm in favor of at least looking at the research behind it, and that's where I would stand. As a teacher, I guess you look at research before you make a decision.
Hey, Mr. Lee. Appreciate it. Mr. Hickey?
Complacent was the one thing I wrote down when we were talking. How long has our current contract been in place?
The staff?
For sanitation, basically. When we talk about hours worked and all that.
I'm not sure.
30
I remember
years.
when it's been a number of years, but at least all 5 that I've been here, and it was in this place before then.
And to kind of follow up on Councilman Lee's points, things change. I work in a business that changes every day, and if you don't change, you're behind. And to be honest with you, what I would like to see done, and I've talked to Mr. Bowl, I would like to see us possibly sit down with the sanitation department and have some discussions. I actually have a few ideas. I don't know if I want to delve into them right now, but where we can maybe work with them to try and resolve, to maybe get things more efficient to a point where we wouldn't have that issue. I can already see a $200,000 savings where they could get undercut. And that's with all things equal. You put the same labor costs, truck costs, of course your tipping fees are going to be the same. I can see an issue where a company, if you put all things equal right now, could undercut the bid by 200,000. Now, we just did our budget, and we had 400,000 that we just did an amendment to a budget and used 200 and some thousand out of general funds. That's money we possibly could have saved and used towards something like that. So, I don't know, I got some different ideas. I want to see what, I like the discussion. I like to see if we can get the best possible bang for a dollar for the taxpayers. That's who we're here to, you know, view our concerns and opinions for.
Hey, Ms. Rickey. Anybody else?
Mayor?
Yes, Ms. Marinas.
My thought is that I think this is a way that we can really take a look at the services we provide for our citizens. Managed competition is probably a way that it forces each of the departments, or whatever department we start with, to really take a look at how they deliver their services and to be able to set it next to the private sector and say, we do as good and we provide this service for less money. And so I think it's just a mechanism for us to really take a hard look at how our money is spent, and that's the council's responsibility. I think it's imperative that we take a real close look at everything that we do for our citizens of Mason City. And the way I read these, this information from Bloomington and Phoenix and such in San Diego, it doesn't necessarily mean that you automatically go out and give an RFP and ask for an RFP. It kind of, like I said, forces the city staff and the management of the city staff to take a real hard look at the services that they provide, and if it's getting our bang for the buck that everybody seems to be talking about. I think it's a great idea, and I'm very much in favor of it.
Thank you, Ms. Marinas. Anybody else? Ms. Solberg.
In agreement with some things that have been said here at the table, you know, we have to come up with a new way of thinking, you know, due to the changes in the economy right now. We are just gonna see if this is feasible. If it's not, I guess we go on with life. It goes down to the bottom of the list and we try something else. I mean, it's just a way of us showing the citizens that we are working for them. The one thing that really stuck out at me in this packet, if this were a business and you owned it, what changes would you make? It's always been done this way, let's just keep doing it, but is that the most efficient way? Whether it be getting our staff on board and getting more efficient, or whether, you know, we privatize this, whatever happens, you know, I mean, we need to just make sure that the citizens are taken care of.
Hey, Ms. Solberg. Ms. Sternquist.
I'm curious, how many of you guys here work for the sanitation department? Okay. How many of you guys that work for the sanitation department feel like your department's delivering the highest quality at the best cost to the taxpayers? Okay, good. That's a good answer. Personally, I don't have any issues with the sanitation department. Never have. I think this is a good process to follow, because those of you that raised your hands, and I think every one of you did, if you truly believe that you're delivering the best quality at the best price, I would ask you to embrace this process, because now we can prove it through a legitimate and fair process, and that's going to be our challenge, to make sure that we're comparing apples to apples and that we avoid opportunities for anybody to unfairly undercut. But we'll be able to prove that your department is delivering the best quality for the best price. So work with us and embrace the process, and then we can put this to rest and move on. I'm very sensitive to the uncertainty that this creates for each and every one of you. Unfortunately, that's not going to go away at the end of this meeting. We've got a process that we're going to need to go through, and I don't know how long this is going to take, but it's probably going to be a good 2 or 3 months at least. At the end of the day, my hope would be that things remain the way they are right now, with the city providing the service. But though I'm sensitive to the needs of each one of you and your families, our primary responsibility is to the taxpayers of Mason City. And quite honestly, there's a lot more of them than there are people that work in the sanitation department. So I think part of our responsibility is to look at the services that we provide at the government level and try and put ourselves in a position where when taxpayers challenge us, we can say we truly believe that we're delivering the highest quality service at the best price. And this is a question that hasn't been addressed for a long, long time. So now we have a chance to work together and prove it and put this one to rest. At the end of the day, I hope we're right back where we are. Now, I am in favor of working with the sanitation department to find areas where we can improve our delivery of service and reduce costs. That's basically what we've been talking about for a year and a half with Lean. But I don't think now is the right time to do that. To do it now when we know we're going into an RFP process feels a little bit to me like a stick rather than a carrot. My hope would be that we get through the RFP process, the dust settles, and then we work together in partnership as we move on to other areas where we may look at cost delivery systems. But you know, the world's changing around us every day. Our costs are going up, our tax base is not keeping pace. More and more people on fixed incomes where their income increases aren't keeping pace. And at some point in time, if we don't address the way we're doing business, we're going to be forced into a position where we're making cuts because we're not going to be able to continue increasing taxes at a fixed pace to keep up with our increasing costs. So hopefully this turns into a responsible exercise for making some intelligent decisions, and we'll get this behind us. As you said, the first one will be the toughest. We'll see where it all nets out.
Question. First, Mr. Trunquist, you said embrace this process. Guys, I don't know. Anybody who's possibly losing their life source to ask them to embrace something is a big thing to do. And I understand their uneasiness. But I agree with most of the things you said. Just that was like, probably not going to happen. But the RFP, who puts it together? Who would be responsible for writing the RFP for the city sanitation? You, Bill, combination of?
And that's part of the decision process that we have to make. What you end up with is two teams. You have a team that does the analysis of the bids that come in, and then you have a team that is responsible for preparing the public bid. And so what we have to figure out, for example, is which team am I going to be on? I mean, am I going to be on the team that helps the sanitation crew put that together, or am I on the evaluation team? Because, and the council members are not, council members usually when this process works is there's a staff team that analyzes the bids that they come in and make a determination on what recommendation there is, and then council makes a decision whether to accept the bid that's been received. And that's typically how it works. So what we have to do is take a look at what staff members are going to do the evaluation and which are going to help them pull it together. And then if there are additional people that they need to have in order to be able to put that proposal together, that we get them that help. So it might be that the finance officer is on the evaluation team, but so then we need to get a financial person for them in order to be, for staff to be able to put the numbers together to make sure that they can provide for the price they're proposing that it works. And so that's the process that we have to do. And you know, City of San Diego has an example of how they, you know, like they have a list of who's on what team, and so I have to see with what they obviously have a lot larger number of people to draw from in order to create those teams. So for us, we've got to determine who's going to be on each of those teams.
Mr. Keaton, you had a comment? Or Mr. Lee, did you not conclude?
No, I'd just like to say that, because I was kind of leading to my point here with whoever's going to help put the RFP together, I would hope that, you know, everybody on the sanitation department would say, hey, we do have some ideas here. We can maybe cut this. We could possibly do this. And if somebody does have a way to save $200,000, I would not be opposed to saying, well, I got a secret, but I better keep it to myself because I don't want to, you know, what you say, cares. I mean, the idea is that if we can help our own sanitation department keep this bid, it's everybody's job to do with that, I think. Not to say I got an idea, but I'm going to say they can figure it out on their own. And so whoever the team ends up being, you know, if you have, I understand once the decision's made, if you're on the analysis part, you can't be working with them. That makes sense to me. But prior to that moment, if somebody thinks, you know what, I think I can work with them to help, you know, this process, I would hope we would all work together in that process.
And it starts out as a combined process from the standpoint at the beginning. All people that provide the service help analyze what should be in the RFP. You know, what kind of service do we provide? So I'll work with the crew, the top bad crew, Bill Stangler, everybody, we would work to figure out exactly the parameters of the RFP. And then at that point, it splits. We end up those that are going to prepare the RFP go and work on it, and the others wait until it's time to review the proposals. And they take that information that was, so we make sure that we have a clear understanding of what's being provided for a level of service and what level of service do we want to see. We look at it and analyze what we don't. We think this is too much level of service based off of, I'd say, recycling demand has gone up, and so we need more pickup. I'm just using that as an example. So then we would need to make sure that we're putting it in the RFP the way we want to see it provided. So we would be analyzing what we're providing, is that the right level of service, and go from there.
Thank you, Mr. Lee. Mr. Kuhn is in line. I'll come back to you.
Thank you, Mayor, and apologize for speaking twice, but I respect everyone's thoughts. The comments towards we always have to change and update our processes. I understand that I'm a taxpayer as well, but where are we going to, from the comments I've heard, are we going to look at every service in the city that, when we're talking about, I mean, there's landscaping businesses that could take care of the parks.
Sure.
I mean, it's not in our realm, but
yeah, I mean, you look.
Hold on. Obviously, we don't manage the schools, but we should be, looking at private schools out of state coming in and doing services. I'm sure Apple makes a computer that could put together an algorithm that makes better political decisions than I do. Where does it stop?
Well, I think, we, in the one, there was one that I included from the city of San Diego, I mean, they're looking at analyzing directly to competition, for example, solid waste collection services, street sweeping, greenery compost facility operations, container delivery services, dead animal pickup. They're looking at street maintenance, pavement markings, storm drain maintenance, traffic signal maintenance, street light maintenance, sidewalk maintenance. I think what you have to do is look at each of the services and first of all determine, is there a private entity that could do it? And are they going to be able to provide the level of service that will meet our demands? So then we would take a look at that and determine, and that's part of the whole process actually with managed competition, is weeding out what can we consider from doing managed competition, bid, and which ones can't. And there are certain services that it doesn't make any sense to do that. So that's part of the process that we have to follow, is determining which ones are we going to consider. In San Diego, the mayor, they go through a process and he then brings forward which ones that, based on staff's analysis, that should be considered for a managed competition RFP, and then they make a decision whether to do it or not do it.
I would just go back to thank you for that answer. I would just go back to the point that every community that has laid out some summaries of doing this has talked about this being a long, thorough process. I just think we have so many initiatives out there, so many ideas all of us are putting out that I would not support using our staff resources and time to continue to look in, or I shouldn't say, excuse me, not continue, but look into different departments that we could potentially put out for a managed competition or an RFP to privatize. So I came here with an open mind and appreciate everyone's thoughts, but I'm just not there, so thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Hickey.
I guess when I talked about, maybe you took it wrong, about having a meeting with sanitation, I know in a discussion I had with Mr. Bull that he said I would rather work with the sanitation department and have us maybe come meet with them, ideas they may have, ideas we may have, and work with them to try to do whatever we can as far as getting to a point where we all feel comfortable. I don't want to lose 12 employees. I know they don't want to lose their jobs. So, and this isn't comfortable for any of us, obviously. It's a tough discussion. But I guess we're looking at it as trying to say that looking at giving the taxpayers the best value for the dollar. One of the things that I seen reading through this was on Indianapolis that has used this process, where they showed a 7% reduction in their overall budget in a 5-year span, which kind of hit me pretty hard too. So I think we owe it to ourselves to look at it. I want to hear from them, to be honest with you. I'm open to their ideas and suggestions. I know I've had a few phone calls, not very many, but I'd rather work with them than against them, I guess is where I'm at on that part of it.
I'm confused by what you're saying. Are you suggesting that we don't do an RFP process, that we'll work with the sanitation department to reduce costs, or? I'm not understanding what your position is.
I'm for the process, but if there's ideas and suggestions where we can work together as a council and them as a sanitation department where we can feel comfortable, and we got to a point where we didn't have to go through a process, I'd be fine with that too. I guess.
See, that confuses me, because that, to me, that implies that we have issues with the sanitation department. I can't speak for anybody else, but I don't. And it almost feels like we're using this as a lever to try to get something, and I don't know what it is we're trying to get. I mean, I know we all want to reduce costs. That's why I thought we were running the process through. I'm confused.
I can respect that. That's where you're at, where everybody else is at.
I mean, I too, like Councilman Kuhn, I don't feel like we have a problem. But like Councilman Lee, I don't think going through the process of proving that we don't have a problem and using data rather than a gut check is a bad thing to do. I think that's a level of responsibility that we owe the constituency. So that's why I support the process. My hope is, at the end of the day, I tend to want to say status quo, but status quo isn't working with the department to cost reduce either.
This question is, and I'm not sure the answer, but with the union contract rate, is there an opportunity, I think that's what Councilman Hickey was getting at, an opportunity to sit down and discuss this without doing a managed competition? Or just between management and councilman?
Well, it would have to look at what hours of service, hours that we're having people work, and how we provide the service, and whether there would be changes relative to that would change any of our positions relative to the cost savings that might be incurred or with the department. So current contract, we'll go another, we did a 4-year contract, so we would have to do, if we just wanted to work that, it would be opening up what we just approved for current contract with a new contract, so over 3 years to go.
What she's supposed to say.
Mr. Lee.
I guess I kind of agree with Mr. Holmquist. I went into this looking when I read through everything. Let's just see if we got the best service. It wasn't, can we save a buck here on what's being done at the city level? If there is a way we can save $200,000, or if there's a way any department, I would hope every department in this town would say, every single day we go to work, let's find a better way or cheaper way to do it for the citizens. If that's available, then that's where the department staff come to us, or we talk, or whatever. I would just hope that's the process always in this town. So it wasn't about that. To me, it was about let's prove to me and to the council and to the citizens that this is the best thing that we do. That we're verifying it through numbers, through statistics, that this is the service that we earn. That's kind of how I'm looking at it. If there's something out there that we know we can save some money on, that's our job as a council, the staff, and the employees to say, hey, this, has anybody ever thought about doing it this way? So there's two different things going on here. And I just want to verify the service, I guess. And I'm almost confused with Mr. Hornquist.
Okay, here's my point. My concern is you verify the process and say that somebody comes in at a lower cost, $300,000, $400,000, whatever it may be. Then you look at these guys and say, now we're going to switch the service over to the private side because we're doing the best thing for the taxpayers, and we haven't worked with them as a group. That's my concern.
And I agree with you, I guess.
Mayor?
Yeah, go ahead, Ms. Brandes.
I guess my question is, I think working with the sanitation department is part of this process that Mr. Trout just talked about. There's a group that is part of it, that takes their side, if you will, and helps them put together the RFP, and that could be a mechanism for looking at all the great ideas and possibilities that are out there for the sanitation. I don't see it, I agree with Mr. Lee, I don't see this as a negative. I see it as a positive way to verify that we've got a great sanitation department and they're giving us the best bang for our buck. I don't see it as a real negative.
All right, thank you very kindly. Mr. King, you had one more comment?
Sorry. When, let's say this says go, it does look like it's going to a council, an actual council meeting. Would we have an opportunity, I guess I don't know the legal side of it, before we had talked about when we, Legacy Manor, I believe is the name, where we said if it was a contractor from out of state, their bid would have to be 5% or more higher. Could we do that here? I mean, say this does go and a private company does get the contract by $2,000.
Yeah, if you read San Diego, what they've done, they have a requirement of 10%. And the council would need to determine what level of expectation we would have for where we make the switch. San Diego says that if 10% savings isn't realized, then it's not worth switching, because you have to go through the process of re-educating, get a new person hired, and go through that process. So you have to determine what level of savings do you want to see before you're willing to switch from having it be a public service to a private service. So there is a provision within their policy, and so as we write ours, we'll have to determine what level is that. Is it 5%? Is it 10%? You know, where is the level that it makes it worthwhile for us to switch from doing it ourselves and getting out of that business? Because if we get out, then we sold our equipment or anything like that, getting back into it causes there's a high cost on the back end if we have to get back into that service 3 years from now, because the savings was not that great, and over time determined that it wasn't what we wanted to do.
All right, anybody else?
Oh, yeah.
Go ahead, Mr.
One
Lee.
more thing. Because if I remember, I don't remember which one is San Diego, or they kind of districted, like every 2 years they bid out sections.
Right.
They never got, because we would never, because we'd dig ourselves in the biggest hole in the world if we said, okay, in 2 years somebody beat our bid, and then we say, okay, and then we sell the, you know, we lose the 12 employees, we sell our trucks, and then somebody says, all right, let's jack that price up twice, and we could never buy back into that bid. So
Exactly.
that has to be weighed in
And
there also.
Right. And
Very
that's
big.
And the contract term that we would want to have is going to be part of it. Do we want locked-in rates for 3 to 5 years, or what level of length do we need in that term of that contract for whomever we would choose, in order for it to make more sense that we're going to see the savings for the citizens? It makes sense for us to get out of this particular type of service.
All right.
Are you looking for feedback on that, or how are you gonna make those determinations when you put an RFP together?
Well, what I'll do is establish, what I'll need to do is go back and write our managed competition program, sort of like the big document, which I didn't copy for you, managed competition guide. This one is 53 pages long, something like that, and it's the heavy detail of how they do their managed competition program. So what I would envision the next step being for me is for us to write our managed competition guide, utilize the other, or at least write what the key points of our guide would be that we're going to follow, present that to council, make sure this is the level of change that you would be willing to accept, how you would run the program. And once you agree to that, then it rolls right into determining what services we're going to do. And we've primarily been talking about sanitation, so that's where we would start. But you would need to see the guide that determines what level of participation we want to see as far as some of those things that we've mentioned before we would consider a change.
I think to John's point, the more capital intensive the department is, the longer the duration of the contract would need to be. And I think the longer the duration of the contract, the more mechanisms we need to protect ourselves from private sector price increases. And I liked where Alex was going with identifying the spread. More or less stacking the deck in favor of the current service provider.
there's a cost to change.
Yeah, I support that.
Good. Well, it's a good discussion. If I put it all together, I'd say it sounds like everyone believes we should be looking to get the best bang for the buck for our taxpayers. And it sounds like there's a general consensus to move toward authorizing or putting on an agenda, let them vote as to whether they want to authorize you to put together a managed competition process. Mr. Lee.
One quick question. Before the RFP was sent out, if we went this way, it sounds like were we okay as a stat or as a council, the management you put together, that we are in agreement with that, I would assume?
You would,
The RFP.
you would put,
correct.
yeah, you would put.
I mean, the mechanism, the percentages, the years.
Right, all of that. The staff would put together what the RFP would look like. And then, once we put it together, then as we do all RFPs, it goes to council for authorization just to seek the RFP. So you would see what we set up for an RFP. Council would approve that, and then it would go out for consideration.
And that would be a point where you could put in the provisions, the coefficients, like I like to call it, for whether it's out of state or you want to beat it by a particular percentage. And that goes to, of course, the capital expenditure that's in each department.
Well,
Or however it works.
this RFP is very different than any other RFP that we've done. Typically, the RFP shows up in the council packet, but this is more of a living, breathing document. It would seem that this is an RFP we should address in a work session before it shows up on a council agenda.
For the coefficients.
I would like
Correct.
to.
And that also gives us a chance to publicize it and get input from the people most affected by it as we have that work session discussion and maybe make some final edits before it goes to the council table. That makes us more partners with the sanitation department as
I think
well.
that's reasonable, folks. You're
What I just said?
But
We're gonna have a work session on the RFP before it comes to, before it shows up in a council agenda.
so, go ahead.
Well, I think with this many sanitation department workers here, is there any way we can put a time frame to this?
Well, based off of my departure for National Guard duty, I would say that in July, I'd like to have the managed competition guide prepared for consideration. And I would say start having meetings to determine the parts that need to go into the RFP at the same time in July. And more than likely, hopefully have a work session in August for council regarding the RFP. That's probably about the earliest I could promise that I could get it. I wish I could do it sooner, but with the schedule, that's probably not, I want to be honest with you, where I'm at with workload, so.
I would say that's probably quicker. I mean, I think that time is kind of fun because I want you to spend time on this and do it right and have a workshop. But I still think certified shovel-ready site, if you got to balance out a little schedule, I'd rather see a little more.
Yeah, and that process is already going. I've already met with Mr. Willett, I've met with other staff members, and we'll be meeting on that in July also. So I think both projects can be going concurrently. That's part of the deal. Each of these take a little bit of input from a lot of people, and so trying to have meetings and keep these things moving along. And the shovel-ready site is one that's going to take a long time. We're determining what the requirements are right now in order to be able to get to that point, and so that's an ongoing process.
All right.
Go ahead. Comments, and I'll stop talking.
A lot of last comments.
Yeah, I think I've said that 4 times. That kind of just and again, respect everyone's decision, that kind of just verified my point, though, that when we're talking about time frame and staff time, that we're talking about how busy we are. I don't want to expend time on something like this. That last time I'll say that. Lastly, a question. When we do have a work session about the actual RFP and what's going to be in it, how does that, this is kind of a technical question, how would that work since we can't take formal action?
That's what I was going to get to right now.
We disagree on that.
No, I'm interested in how you answer that question.
No, okay, what I was thinking we could do, and it sounds like there's general consensus here to have Mr. Trout develop a managed competition model and a potential RFP for council consideration. And we would set it up so he put it on a workshop based on the timeline that you provided, get council feedback on what that looks like then before it goes to council.
and that gives us a check. Well, it gives Mr. Trout actually a checkpoint for what to consider, because there's coefficients of a number of different areas that council may want to set arbitrary levels for, for protection for the workers, the citizens, and quite frankly, just the operation of dams. Does that seem like a reasonable solution? Anybody?
And obviously, as things go, as they go, I'll let you know whether I can meet these timelines or not, and we'll make adjustments.
We can adjust appropriately. Yeah, Mr. Hickey, do you have one last thing?
Yeah, this 10% norm, is that kind of the norm with other cities?
That I don't know. That's something I'm gonna have to find out. I only saw that mentioned specifically in San Diego's guide, and so that'll be part of the process, is to see what others put for their parameters. But that's the only one I saw a specific mention of that was in San Diego. They do mention consideration of giving, if they're close, to give it to the public, let the public continue to do it. But the only one that mentions a specific number is San Diego, from what I can see in all of my research so far.
Okay, and I'm going to make 2 quick points, and then I'll probably be done. So do we want to have discussions? I'm asking for everybody else's opinion. Do we want to have discussions with the sanitation department? Yeah or nay? I know where you're at, but that's all right. Again, here's my fear. My fear is, say we say 10%. I'm assuming a sanitation worker makes $20 an hour. Somebody comes in, cuts it, pays their guys $18 an hour. There's your 10% right there. And then we say, hey, do we give this to the other private entity as a result of that, without any other cost-saving factors that they may have? I would rather retain our employees, keep it going, and utilize them the best we can, without having to say to 12 people. And if the RFP process runs its course, somebody undercuts it to a point where we say we're going to privatize, and we lose 12 employees, and we haven't done anything to work with them to try and reduce their chances of losing their jobs in the long run.
All right, I lied, I'm talking to you. Is it discussing with them, isn't that technically collective bargaining?
Well, we would have to get their
That's
permission
why
to
I'm
open.
curious.
We would have to get their permission to open a contract for that discussion.
That's where I was with Scott, just
Because the
confused about
contract
what that
period
could
is
be.
closed, we would have to ask permission to open a contract.
And that would be essentially their decision.
Right.
Go ahead, Mr.
I'm having trouble understanding how, if there's people that have ideas on how we can reduce costs, I'm not understanding why they're not coming forward. That's the disconnect for me. I'm getting the impression there's some kind of a barrier in place, and I'm not understanding that. It's just not the way I think.
Well, and again, my fear is, if we say 10% and a private company comes in and they bid it out based on $18 an hour, we're paying $20 an hour, and they can reduce that below that 10% cost. I don't want to lose 12 employees because some other company is going to pay their employees 18 or say $15 an hour.
Agreed, but I think we can handle that with the RFP process. We can build into the RFP numbers of employees and labor rates, can we not?
We can establish a lot. I think there are some things that are open, but part of the RFP is staff determining what level they want to pay themselves, what number of hours they're going to work in a given day, and that is part of the RFP for them to determine what cost it comes to the city at.
Can we not also set up the RFP so that within the definition of the RFP itself, there's a very specific response? Can we not set up the RFP so that within the response to the RFP, there's a very specific response to the parameters defined, but we create a mechanism by which, as an attachment to the RFP, there can be a laundry list of ideas that could cost reduce the delivery of services based on differentials as they may exist to what's defined in the RFP itself.
Yes. I mean,
Okay.
there are
So,
plenty of differentials that you can establish in the RFP that will allow you to choose a particular company over another, yes.
okay, now I think I think a private company may be hesitant to offer up cost reduction opportunities. I think in the private sector, they may be more apt to hang on to those, hoping for a contract, and then work after the fact as leverage. However, I think that gives the public sector an advantage.
Yeah, they'd have to bring them to the plate to really have an opportunity to be successful. They'd have to bring them ahead of time.
Yeah. I'm just having a real hard time understanding the concern that you're trying to express. I think it's our life experiences, and we're just seeing it from a slightly different angle.
And I'll throw it out there. I've been holding it. One of the discussions that we hear, and we've all heard it, if a sanitation worker works a 10-hour day, and they work 6, they get paid for 10, correct? Mm-hmm. Okay.
Yes.
So you got 12 workers. Say all 12 of them get their job done efficiently, doing a 6-hour day. So they've worked 72 hours between the 12 workers. You could possibly, on the private side, pay the same guy the same amount of money. You could reduce that number down to 8 workers, work them a 10-hour day, and get the same value, and you've saved $3,840 by doing it that way. You do that over the course of a year, you just saved $192,000. Very significant sum of money right there.
But to Scott's point, that.
And that's paying, but that's paying the same wage, and that's even paying the same wage that they're getting paid currently right now. But then they would work a 10, they could reduce their staff from 4, work a 10-hour day, you could save $192,000. That would go into their bid process, possibly.
Yeah.
To Mr. Dickey's point, I see your point. 4 hours with 12 employees, that's essentially 6 FTEs. I think the streets are looking at 5 right now that potentially need to be filled. That's not unreasonable if management is doing its job, quite frankly. If management's doing its job, and I think it's a responsibility of management to make their employees look good and give them opportunities to succeed. If they're planning appropriately, to your point, I can easily imagine how they could queue jobs during the day, where when those folks are done, they could go over and finish up the an extra 4 hours a day and save all of those jobs. I mean, it's cross-functional nature.
Yeah, and part of that
that's something that you could look at.
Right. Part of that issue, though, is that sanitation workers, because of the contract and what it says, they skip their breaks,
so
they
that's
skip their lunch,
and
they, their day is, because of the incentive, they have to be able to leave early. They'll skip those opportunity breaks that other employees go.
You shouldn't be doing that anyway, though.
But that's the way the contract is established, so they have that opportunity and they take advantage of it. So
and I can say this, I know there's federal legislation out there that anybody who works a 6-hour shift has to take lunch. Mm-hmm. Has to. You can't work as hard as they work and not take your break and take your lunch, re-energize and refuel, and not take a break. They'll kill themselves. And eventually somebody will get hurt and make a mistake and slip, fall, whatever. You need to take them breaks. You need to take that lunch, re-energize. This is a safety issue more than anything.
Well, I think that generally, if anybody has anything that they want to add to it, so essentially, currently, there's a consensus to have you develop managed competition. We'll come back for a workshop at that point in time. They can set coefficients and get feedback from you on what you've seen in the process and what you've developed. Of course, everyone will have an opportunity to review the information that we have available at that time. Then we can see if there's consensus to move forward to put it on an agenda or not at all. Is that generally a general consensus? Hear nothing else, so I will assume that it is. Thank you for a lively discussion, folks. Thank you for everyone being here, and seeing no other business on the agenda.
Negotiations between membership.